Hi, welcome to my channel, Grit, Grind and Gratitude, where we talk to micro-entrepreneurs about their journey of becoming a micro-entrepreneur and walking that path. Grit, Grind and Gratitude shares stories of resilience, of purpose and values-led entrepreneurs who are shaping their futures boldly. Hi, Lyla. Welcome to Grit, Grind and Gratitude, which is a podcast which puts the spotlight on micro-entrepreneurs and their journeys. So it's a pleasure to welcome you on board today and tell us about yourself, introduce yourself to the world.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really just so thrilled to be here with you today. So my name is Lyla. I'm a social worker and I'm the founder of my business, Roots Consulting and Therapeutic Services. And I'm talking to you from Eswatini in Southern Africa. Through my business, I offer support services to parents and caregivers and educators. And really, my passion really lies with supporting the adults in children's lives, supporting and nurturing them so that they can be a nurturing and safe place for the children in their care to land. So thank you so much for having me.
That's so beautiful, actually, because our children are unfortunately growing up in a world which is so different from who we were and how we were being brought up into the world. And there are pros and cons of technology, but with AI, we can see that a lot is just happening in our children, especially as a mother of a teenager. I'm fairly concerned. So it's exciting to have you and to understand what Roots does through you. And tell us what prompted you to start this venture. What were you doing before you started this venture?
Yeah, sure. So I had a wonderful opportunity to go and train as a social worker in Australia. So I lived in Sydney for nearly 10 years and I did my training there. And my first job, I always wanted to work with children. That was always my passion since I was a teenager. And so my first job out of university was working in the foster care system, which I absolutely loved. Incredibly challenging, especially as a new graduate, very green, but learned so much. And really, right from then was just like, it felt like magic working with kids and learning about their trauma and the impact of trauma on the brain. And at that time, the new research around brain plasticity and the brain's ability to heal itself and all of these sorts of things was, it was starting to come into more popular discourse. And it was just so exciting to me, and I loved it, but it was incredibly challenging. And I then moved, worked really hard and ended up burning out. And that kind of in a way became a little bit of a pattern for me. I would find jobs in quite difficult areas, work really hard, become really passionate about it, but it was unsustainable and I would burn out. So from there, I worked in criminal justice, I worked in education, but always working with the children and families involved, so I was never working with the inmates, I was working with the families of inmates. When I worked in education, it was also, working with the children and their families, navigating the education system.
And from Australia to Swaziland, what brought you back?
So I grew up here in Swaziland, in Eswatini, and I always wanted to come back. I was very passionate about doing work here, but also loved my life here. But I had this opportunity to go overseas, and with a bit of pushing from my parents, headed off. I'm an only child. My parents are a bit older, and I just decided, I think I'd always wanted to come home and work here. I never felt well enough equipped to come back and work as a social worker. I was quite nervous about that, I think, particularly having had this pattern of kind of burning out in work. But one time I came home for a visit and I was like, no, that's it, I'm coming back. But yeah, my parents were getting older. I wanted to be closer to them. And I think maybe felt a bit more ready to work as a social worker in Eswatini. It's very small, it's very isolated. So I think I just...
Yeah, half of our listeners wouldn't have heard the word Swaziland as a country,
Yeah.
you know? It's such a baby country next to South Africa. Yeah.
Yeah. I think when I moved home, it was the first year there was a graduating class of social workers at the university in Swaziland. So social work was also very new to this part of, to this country. And I remember having social workers in the Department of Welfare calling me and saying, can you help us? Because we were feeling a little lost. And I was like, very conscious of not wanting to get myself involved in something that then I couldn't, not to repeat that pattern of getting involved in very intense work and then burning out anymore. So sorry, I'm
So from that, how did Roots start?
Yeah, so I think the pivotal thing that happened is that I had a baby. And so in 2020, in the end of 2020, in the height of the second wave of COVID, I had my daughter. And I did have to go back to work after I had her. But suddenly, it didn't make sense anymore for me. I was working again really hard to support other children, other families, which I loved, but was totally neglecting my own home life because I just didn't have the capacity. And we were lucky. My husband at the time was able to stay home with her. And when he got full-time employment, I was like, can I please come home? And that was really pivotal. But I think having her and having the experience of becoming a parent really changed things, and it changed me, as it does inevitably. And I just decided for my own well-being and the way I was going to have the most impact also was if I could set something up that was more sustainable, and set something up that was really focusing on parents and caregivers. And educators are in there because they do so much caregiving and are often very under-supported. So I decided to try and start my own business, and I didn't have a really clear path in my mind, but I'd been exposed to Circle of Security, which I'm not sure if you or your listeners is familiar with, but it's an attachment-based program which I was exposed to during my time in foster care and loved. So I thought, let me just do some additional training with Circle of Security and I'll take it from there and we'll see where it goes. And I've been chipping away at it ever since. My daughter is now 5, and I've now had another baby, and I think my business is still very much in its infancy. But now I feel like this is something I could actually, this could be my source of income, and this could be something, it's not just a side project anymore. Yeah.
Cool. So tell us what Roots does and what are specific services that you bring to the world. Yeah. Tell us a little more about that.
So I was going to say last year, but it was actually the year before. In October 2024, I had again just like a really wonderful opportunity to be part of Dr. Greer Christenbaum's first cohort of her professional certification. And if you or your listeners are not familiar with her, she wrote the book The Nurture Revolution, which if you haven't read, I highly recommend. whether you're a parent or no parents or expecting a baby or would like to have a baby at some point. It's really such an incredible book. So while before I started my business, I heard her on a podcast and was just like, yes, this is why I want to do this work. And she's a neuroscientist. She's also a doula and a sleep consultant and a mother. So she brings a really relatable, caring, very heart-led layer to her neuroscience work. And she started this professional certification called Nurture Neuroscience, and she's just about to enroll her 3rd cohort. So I managed to get into the 1st cohort, which was actually full, and I pleaded with her and I said, please, this is where I live, I'd really love to bring your work to this part of the world. And so I did her certification, and it was amazing. And now I mention all of that because a lot of my services have really been shaped by that training that I offer. So and they're really about bringing the impact of nurture on lifelong mental health for our babies, but also for us as parents. And I think what really just a bit of an aha moment for me in listening to her talk and reading her book was that, we know that the brain does a lot of growing between 0 and 3 years old. Like, we know that, and that is what excited me all those years ago, over a decade ago when I worked in foster care, of like the impact of experiences on those early years. And then we then also know that during adolescence, the brain does a whole lot of growing and changing and rewiring. And I since then had worked in a high school and had really experienced working with adolescents. But what her work is all about is the fact that, part of it is that the next time, kind of the next stage, is when we become parents. And I don't know if you're familiar with this term matrescence or putrescence, which is the name we give to this period of time where when we become a parent, our brain becomes plastic again.
Oh, wow.
So we can rewire and we can heal a lot of our kind of childhood wounds when we become a parent.
Amazing.
And that our brain like completely it shifts, right? And so a lot of people, and myself included, have this experience of becoming a parent and kind of feeling like, I'm a different person now. Or, it can also be framed as like feeling like you're losing yourself. But it's actually this really beautiful, if we understand what's going on, it's this really beautiful opportunity to have this kind of metamorphosis and go through this next stage of development. And when I heard her talk about that, I was like, yes, like this makes so much sense. And I think also really fueled, I'd already wanted to work with parents and caregivers, but it really fueled that for me of like, it's not so well known that this is happening, and people going through matrescence and putrescence really deserve support and nurture. And then the connection, right? If we can nurture the adults, then they are better able to nurture their babies, and we're setting everyone up for better mental health.
So what specific services do you bring in that area?
Yeah, so in that area, I run mom and baby circles. So that's for mums with babies between 0 to 6 months. And it's a kind of this beautiful combination of education and understanding what's going on in our babies' brains and in our own brains as we become mothers, but paired with nervous system care and learning practices to look after ourselves and our nervous system and our build up our resiliency. And then, of course, sitting together and being in community. And it's just this beautiful mix of these 3 elements that just really create something very special, I think. it's like no other mum and baby class that I know of. So that's really beautiful. So I run that. And at the moment, because I have my own baby, and what was really nice is when I ran it with him. So I kind of experienced it along with the mums. He's a bit older now. He's now nearly 9 months. So I'm not going to be doing that anymore. But because my capacity is a little bit low, I am running them online, which is really lovely. So people from all over the world in a similar time zone can join in with those. So I run those. I also run a very similar one, but for pregnant mums. So before they had their babies, and that same beautiful mix of community, nervous system care, and education around what's going on in your brain, because these brain changes for mums start, when you are pregnant. So, from the moment you conceive, your brain is starting to rewire itself and prepare itself for nurture, essentially. So I run those. I also run, I mentioned that I trained with Circle of Security. So I do run also a Circle of Security parenting program, which is an attachment-based parenting program. So it's not about, it's not a behavior change program, although behavior change is almost always the result. But it's about how do we strengthen the attachment relationship between a parent and a child. And I also could talk to you for a long time about Circle of Security. I love Circle of Security as well. So I run those, and those groups are for parents and caregivers. So moms, dads, grandparents, if they're doing caring, really anybody who's caregiving to a child. And it's there's a lot of interest from parents and caregivers of children between 0 and 6, but it really is applicable all the way through. I would even say if you have adult children, doing Circle of Security is a really eye-opening and enriching experience. And because it's a group program, again, there's also this beautiful element of sitting together as parents and caregivers and that community that comes through that. And I do those also online at the moment. I have run some face-to-face, but at the moment my work is online. So I do those. And I absolutely love it when dads join in for that, because it's, there's, well, I think it's a combination of things, but, often it's the mums or the grandmas or the aunties who do this sort of thing. And there's so much benefit to fathers and grandfathers and, to do this as well. For our children and for ourselves, there's so much of it is about self-reflection, I would say, across all my services. Often I've had parents and caregivers say to me that, I did this because I wanted for the benefit of my child, and yet I benefited so much. I thought it was for them, but it was actually for me, which gives me goosebumps, because that's, for me, is what it's all about. So I run those, and then I also run one-on-one sleep support sessions. So that is using the nurture neuroscience approach. So fully responsive, no sleep training. Really, I take a very evolutionary, biological approach to sleep. So a lot of it is also saying, it's normal that your baby wants to be close to you. It's normal that your baby cries if you leave them in the room by themselves, and trying to work with our baby's biology rather than against it to get everyone as much sleep as possible.
And as a mom, I can reflect back to my days of how sleep deprived we would walk around when we were, when our children were in the stages of weaning off, Oh, amazing. I'm so excited. So next time when you're running any cohorts like that, please feel free to text the information to me, and I would spread the word here in my circle of
Thank you. I definitely will. I have a mum and baby circle that's coming up actually in February. So I'll send you all the details if any of your listeners are in that group of mums with babies between 0 to 6. I'd love to
That would be
have
lovely. That would
them.
be lovely.
Yeah.
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 So tell us what were your high points of this journey? How many years now has Roots been in existence?
Yeah. I was trying to think about that actually when I was preparing myself for this, and it's kind of hard to say because I think, I mean, okay, so I ran my first Circle of Security group. What would it be now? 3 years ago. But I've had different capacities in those 3 years. So, like I said, I do feel like my business is very much in its infancy. I have a daughter in preschool. I have an 8-month-old at home. So it's yeah, in different capacities for the last 3 years. Yeah.
So tell us about what were your wow moments during this last 3 years.
Yeah. So I've mentioned the training with Greer. I think that has really been, I couldn't believe it when I got in. Like I said, it was full and I really pushed to be in it because I really believe in the work she's doing. And having made that professional connection with her and the nurture neuroscience practitioners that have graduated from her program has just been incredible. That was definitely it felt like meeting a celebrity. It was amazing, and it's continued to be so supportive and amazing. But I think also, you know, every time I complete a series, you know, every time I complete a mum and baby circle, every time I run a Circle of Security program series, I kind of have to pinch myself to be like, I can't believe I get to do this. It's so, it's really just, there's magic that comes when parents sit together, I think. And when we have a safe place to talk about what's really hard about parenting and be nurtured by each other and heard, you know, and really feel heard and validated, and also celebrate that, like, yeah, we are different people because of our children, and that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. There's so many things in society that make it really hard, but it's such a gift. And I think whenever that magic comes about is when I just am like, yeah, those are my wow moments. I'm wowed by the parents that I work with, for sure. Yeah.
I'm also getting goosebumps because this work means just so much, because as a mother, I see so many moms struggling, balancing work, trying to give the best care to their toddlers or children, adolescents, and sleep. Yeah. So all these three. So it's beautiful that you're doing this work. Tell me, I'm sure there must be challenges as well in this.
Absolutely. I kept saying to my husband that, like, I don't know what I'm going to talk to you about, because when you say, you know, when you talk about like entrepreneurs, like, I've never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. You know, running a business has been a huge learning curve for me. Huge. You know, the work of the work with my clients I love, and it comes quite easily to me, and I felt very prepared for with my social work training. You know, I wasn't necessarily transitioning careers so much. It was more adding on and adding depth. But running a business has been a really big learning curve, and one I'm still learning. You know, and how to set it up. I think I spoke before about kind of burning out, and I think running your own business, you can burn out really quickly as well, especially if you're trying to do it on your own. You know, I don't have a team as much as I'd love to, and maybe one day. So I'm really trying to set up a business that feels sustainable and sustainable in that I'm not going to burn out, but also sustainable in that it can sustain me and bring in an income And that sometimes feels, it feels icky. I don't love marketing myself. I don't love, doing all of that stuff that you've got to do to get yourself out there. I've always worked, before this, I've always worked in some sort of system, the foster care system, the criminal justice system, the education system. I've never had to directly charge my clients for my services. So that has been it's been challenging to me to really say to myself, I have worth, what I'm offering has value, and I can charge for it. And I need to charge enough that I can, do it. But also, so find the balance of like, what does it mean to be a heart-led, I think it's Dr. Greer Gushenbaum who talks about like a heart-led business, how do I market in a way that is heart-led and genuine, but doesn't devalue what I'm trying to do. And I think also operating in this part of the world, the reality is, the majority of the people in my local area can't afford my services. So how do I make it accessible? And how do I set up something where people aren't taking advantage of me, but also those that can't afford my services can be treated differently? And how can I implement sliding scales and all of these sorts of things to make my services accessible? How can I scale my services? So I also run workshops, or I'm trying to build a resource like library of maybe free or very low cost resources, because it's smart from a business point of view to have a bit more passive income, although I don't love that term because you have to put a lot of effort and energy into creating those income streams. So how can I create those for myself, but also provide things that are different scale point, price points, so that people can access what they can. I mean, those are just some of the challenges. There's been so many. Yeah. I think also like accessing clients has also not been so easy. They're the people like yourself and others who immediately are like, I can see value in this. I want this for myself. But there are many people, and I think because, as you know, as a parent yourself, like becoming a parent is a really confronting thing. We're confronted with a lot of our stuff from the past and from how we were parented. There's a lot of shame that can bubble up, and a lot of uncertainty, feeling judged. You have to be quite vulnerable to be able to come and say, yes, I want to sit with other parents and learn. I want to reflect on my parenting and how I was parented. There's a level of vulnerability that some people really easily want to lean into and like kind of jump in head first. And for other people, it's really hard to do that. And sometimes they can become a bit defensive, or can really like try and push away. So, and I find trying to show those people, although they will come when they are ready, but just to show that what I am doing has value, and that it can be beneficial, and that you're not going to be judged, and that the spaces I create, I really try and create safe spaces. But the way that marketing happens these days, on social media or wherever, I don't know exactly who I'm talking to. So yeah, I have to be really careful about how do you phrase things, how will it be received by parents of caregivers, or by diverse parents and caregivers with diverse experiences and trauma and whatever it may be, whether that's small letter T traumas or big letter T traumas. I think that has been challenging as well. I think I naively thought that I would just put one thing out there and everyone would come running. But it's not always that easy. Yeah.
Did you build your own website or did you subcontract it to somebody or how, like, you built it
Yeah.
yourself?
So my website, I'm very, very lucky that my husband is actually a software engineer. So it's been a labor of love from both of us. And like, oh, I'll have the kids on a Saturday if you could do some work on my website and things like that. So I was very lucky to have him. I did, this is again another one of the learnings is like, oh, I can create flyers and do my branding. Surely that's not so hard. I've got a Canva subscription, and then you try and do it and you realize this is a very specialized skill set. So I did hire a graphic designer who did all my branding stuff, and that was such a good investment. But it's those kind of decisions when I say about like running your own business that is where do you invest your time, where do you invest your energy, your money, the little bits of money I have, because I didn't have like a capital to start my business. It's everything it's just going back into the business at this stage. So that's trying to learn how to do that is very hard.
Cool. So tell me, this is what the channel is about. So micro entrepreneurs who are bootstrapped, and essentially how to make most of the money that we generate, and how do we plow that in? How do we lean into the community of other micro entrepreneurs who might be bringing complementary skills to the table? Yeah, that's what Emmy Hub does as a service. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward a bit and tell us about, in the last 3 years, if you look back at your journey, what will be some words of wisdom that you want to share for our listeners who are either sitting on their passion project and not getting the courage to jump into it, or have just jumped into it but wondering, oh man, this looks more difficult than I actually originally thought?
I'm wondering if how wise I am, because I feel like I'm still learning. But I think I think if you're passionate, if you're sitting on something and you're passionate about it, it is scary to just jump in. And there's always sacrifice that has to happen, whether that's financial, whether it's your time and energy, there is some level of sacrifice that has to come in. I think for us, like, definitely we've been living on one income for the entirety of the time we've been trying to build this business, because it takes time before you get to a point where you're generating an income. But if you're passionate about it, jump in. You don't know until you start. You really have no idea, and you also don't know what you need to learn until you start going. So just jump in with I was like, okay, I'm just going to run one Circle Security series and just see how it goes. And every time you do something, you learn, and so just go for it and be prepared to be flexible and change track if it's not working, and try and see everything as a learning opportunity. And you will fill in the gaps as you go. I think at the moment for me, like, I'm trying to I think you have to learn to upskill, which for some people, like my husband is one of these people who just loves to learn how to do new things. Whereas I find it like really challenging, and I can very easily spiral into, oh, why should I even bother? This is too difficult. I can't learn this new thing, and I'm trying to, at the moment, get my head around. I don't even know what the term for it is. It's like build an email list and gather email addresses and and automate things on the back end of my business. And it's been so hard for me to learn this, and but you've got to be open to doing that, and yeah, and just to try and keep plodding on because if I look back, you know, and this interview is a beautiful opportunity to do that. I've learned and I'm doing things so much better than I did the first time I ran that circle security group, you know. And in 3 years' time, I will probably feel the same, that gosh, from this point on, like I'm gonna learn and do things so much better. You kind of just got to keep going. The other thing that I was thinking about is, and maybe this is a bit niche, but I think often as mothers, when we become mothers, is when we decide maybe this little passion project or this idea I've been ruminating on, I'm gonna do it. And I think partly that's because, like I said, our brain changes and our priorities shift, and our brains become wired to be motivated to care for our babies, which also can spill into other aspects of our life, and that's definitely what happens for me. And so if there are mothers out there who have either just started small businesses or are thinking about it, again, I say go for it, but I also think, you know, you see all these moms talking about, I want to run my own business so I can be home and present for my children, which was a big motivator for me, for sure. But you can't be with your children and trying to work on your business at the same time. Like, then you're doing everything half, you know, and this myth of like, I can be home and working and generating an income while being present with my children. It actually doesn't, it's not possible, or at least it's not possible for me. Maybe others can do it differently, but you know, I don't want to be on my phone or trying to do things when my children are around. So I really had to try and build structure around that, which is not easy with little ones because, you know, the baby doesn't nap when I think he's going to, and he doesn't nap for as long as I think he's going to, or my preschooler gets sick and isn't at school for a week, or, you know, things are constantly not what you're expecting them to be. So you really got to be flexible, but have like a container, a structure, like a loose structure or a flexible structure, you know, so that you can give your business the time and energy it deserves and be present with your children and not try and do the two things at the same time. And yeah, I think that's why I say I've been chipping away at my business for the last 3 years, because it's had to shift and change depending on what's going on with my kids. Yeah.
Perfect. So I just wanted to recap that for my listeners.
Yeah.
One, you talked about patience. You talked about perseverance. You talked about flexibility. You talked about launching and learning rather than just sitting and trying to think of a perfect product to bring to the market. I also heard leaning into your support system, you know, your husband doing something for you, somebody else doing something for you. Yeah, so not try to do it all by yourself. And also heard discipline, and, you know, a little bit of discipline loosely created as a young mom. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful learnings. Yeah.
I mean, I think something else that I maybe didn't mention is like, yeah, you do need to lean on people, like both in terms of, I think when I had my daughter, I was so desperate to not be working full time that when I first left my job, I was like, no, I'm doing it all. I'm going to do all the parenting. I'm going to, you know, and you can't, especially if you want to grow a business. So leaning on people like that. But in terms of your business also, I mean, I've done a lot of like exchanges. Like a beautiful friend of mine has started doing business coaching. So she joined one of my programs, and in exchange, I did 2 months of business coaching with her. You know, I mentioned my husband built my website, you know, other things like that. And you just got to ask people, because you never know what people might be willing to do for you. I think that's where my social work skills have really served me well, is that as a social worker, you're always working within a system. So you always got to network. You got to have a referral base, right? And I've been working to build that for the clients that I work with, so that I have the professionals who are aligned to refer to, but also for myself, like build my list of professionals who are going to help me advertise or spread the word in their little network. And that is so important. And it doesn't feel super comfortable, but whatever your platform is, like I use Instagram. I wouldn't say I'm super active, but I use it mostly actually to connect with other professionals. And so when I have something coming up, I literally go down the list and say, hey, I'm running this thing. Would you share it on your page? Would you share it in your network? And some people don't respond, and that's cool. And some people are so willing to do so much, and because they see the value in their work, and they see it, if they're a pediatric chiropractor, they don't do what you do, but you guys have the same clients, so it's finding those businesses that run parallel to you, that you can mutually support each other. Yeah.
I hear collaboration in that, actually.
Yeah.
Collaboration with like-minded and, people who can, or businesses which can, support each other in growing the good work and bringing the good work to the world. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you, Lyla. Thank you, Lyla, for your time today. Your journey highlights a lot of grit, a lot of grind. As a mother of 2 young children, to grow a business is almost like birthing a third one.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely feel that. And I definitely feel like I have 3 infants at the moment. Yeah.
And then there was lots of gratitude because I heard your husband for your husband and for the universe as how things have unfolded for you. So lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you so much for being our guest today and sparing time to be there for our listeners and sharing from your journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me on. It's been so lovely to chat with you, and such a beautiful opportunity as well. Thank you.
If you liked this interview, please don't forget to subscribe by pressing the bell icon and follow us on our social media handles as we talk to more and more micro entrepreneurs who are living their dreams boldly.